if you are someone who is recently diagnosed with uterine fibroids, or maybe you were already diagnosed and you have just not been on top of things or not following up like you should, I am going to help you get back on track today so that we can take better control of our health. Hey babes, welcome back. And if you are new around here, I'm Shantae and I share holistic wellness tips and I share my journey with fibroids and how I have been able to manage fibroids and shrink fibroids naturally. Today I'm going to be sharing tips for how to prepare for a gynecologist appointment if you have fibroids, and also just give some tips throughout about how to make the most of those appointments and get the most information that is going to be helpful for you. So what I like to do before I get ready for an appointment is I like to sit down and I will prepare a list of questions, but also I will think about anything that needs to be addressed during my appointment. So if I have chronic symptoms that keep coming up, I like to make a note of that. And this is also where tracking your cycle is really important and really comes in handy. So if you are not tracking your cycle, I highly recommend you start doing that. And I think I actually have a period tracker you can download, and I will put that down in the description box so you can have access to that and start tracking your cycle. The information that you get from tracking your cycle is going to be really helpful in pointing out patterns, pointing out symptoms that you keep having, and just having more information for you to give your gynecologist, because the reality of the situation is, especially if you have not been seeing the same gynecologist for a long time, this person only sees you once or twice a year. So it's very difficult for them to really get a full picture of what's going on. So the more information that you can provide for them, that can really help them get a better picture and have more clues or insight into how they may need to treat you, or suggestions or even referrals that they might need to make for you. Now, after I have, written down any symptoms that keep coming up, any concerns that I might want to address, now is when I jump into my questions. Even if it's been years since your fibroid diagnosis, it's possible that you still don't have the answer to these questions. And so before I even jump into this, I want you to get a pen and paper, and I want you to write these down. I'm also going to put a link to a blog post that I have that has these questions in case you missed them. But in case you don't get to that, go ahead, pause this video, grab a pen and paper, and come back and let's get into it. So the first question that you want to ask your gynecologist is what type of fibroids you have. There are actually different types of fibroids. You might have intramural, which are in the uterine wall, or subserosal. You might also have I hope I say this right, pedunculated fibroids, which are actually on a stalk, which they kind of like protrude out, and they're like on a little stalk. And so with that being said, you do want to know which type of fibroids you have, because if you are trying to conceive, if you are considering a fibroid removal procedure, if you are even considering just only doing the holistic route, you want to know which type of fibroids you have, because that may or may not impact some of the decisions that you'll have to make on your journey. So the second question that you'll want to ask is, what size are the fibroids that you have? The size and the location. So this question can be a little bit tricky because even with imaging, if you have fibroids, it's likely that your uterus is distorted. The shape and even the size of your uterus is likely distorted. But whenever you do an ultrasound, you can get kind of a decent idea of the size and the locations of your fibroids. This might impact you later on when you are trying to make decisions about conceiving or anything like that. And just as an example, the largest fibroid that I have sits on the back of my uterus. And so if I wanted to conceive again, I likely not have a problem just because where it is should not impact my fertility or my ability to carry. And so those are things that you want to know as soon as possible so that you can be able to make informed decisions about your care going forward. Now, the next question that you'll want to ask your doctor, and honestly, this probably is one of the first things that comes up at diagnosis. But if you're further along and you are routinely having the size of your fibroids checked, you want to ask your doctor if they recommend a removal procedure at this time. Now, there are a lot of factors that affect whether doctors suggest removal. Again, if you are trying to conceive, if you are having very severe symptoms, usually those are some indications for having a removal procedure. But actually, a lot of doctors really are okay with you not doing a removal procedure if it's not necessary, if you are asymptomatic or if you're not having severe or noticeable symptoms. A lot will tell you to wait and see. While I never suggest waiting and seeing, fibroids can greatly impact your health, and so even if you don't want to do a removal procedure, even if that's not on the table with you, you do want to start making lifestyle changes. But your doctor will let you know if they think that it's a good idea or it's important for you to do a removal procedure at that time. You'll want to ask them what types and how many procedures they have done. Now, this is a very important question if you are someone who is considering removal and if you are considering removal with your current doctor. And the reason that I say this is because many doctors train doing hysterectomies pretty regularly during their residency. However, some of them may not be as skilled or may not have as much experience doing myomectomy or certain types of myomectomy. And so I want to be careful how I say this, but you just want to know what types of procedures your doctor has experience doing. And I say this because if a doctor has more experience or is more comfortable with doing a certain type of procedure, they may be more likely to recommend that procedure to you just because that is what they're comfortable with. And that is not always necessarily the best way to do a procedure. So if you are someone that's considering doing a fibroid removal procedure, I really recommend doing your research. I actually have a blog post that talks about a lot of the different types of removal that is available to you, and so I'll post that link below so you can check that out. And if you want me to do a whole nother video on that, let me know down in the comments and I'll just do a whole nother video outlining the different types of procedures that are currently available. And as always, it is always a good idea before doing any kind of surgery or procedure to get a second opinion if you're not feeling confident or comfortable with what your current doctor is suggesting or recommending. So the fifth question that you'll want to ask at your next appointment is, what blood work or tests are we doing today? And the reason that you want to ask this question is because sometimes when we go to our annual appointments, we have the same things done over and over again. And I don't know about you guys, but for years, I never really paid that much attention to those results because unless something was deficient and they called me and told me I needed to supplement, I just kind of assumed everything was okay and never really thought anything of it. But now that I am more diligent about my health and diligent in my wellness journey, I want to know exactly what tests are being done. And going back to earlier when I told you to make sure you're writing down a list of any symptoms or anything you're noticing that's coming up every month or just frequently for you, doctor might decide to do a different test. And so you want to know ahead of time what tests or what blood work they're doing so that when those lab results come back, and I know many of us get them back on the patient portal, you can just look on that portal, see those results, see if anything looks off to you. I know sometimes they're difficult to read, but you'll remember to ask about it later because it has actually happened to me before that where a doctor has forgotten to explain some results to me that we were specifically looking for. So that's why I like to ask that question because it just kind of gets us out of the pattern of what we do routinely, and it helps you to be more in the know about what's really going on with your body and you can get more information. I hope you guys found this video super helpful. Let me know in the comments if there are any other questions that you like to ask when you go to the doctor. Also, be sure to like this video, share it with other women in your life so that I can reach as many women as possible, especially women with fibroids who really need this information so that they can make better choices for their health.